because you're honors, you get a second video. If you've already watched the first one, my son's in there coughing and making all kinds of noise, so sometimes I might have to pause. We're going to talk about tangent. And you don't need to be too upset about tangent. It's pretty much the same. You still have A, B amplitude, you still have B frequency, and the only difference is now your period is pi over B. Hold on one second. Okay, sorry about that. He was caught. But anyways, tangent, your period now is pi over B. And tangent, if you remember from the unit circle, because tangent is sine over cosine, you're going to have some undefined spots. When, sine is 1 and cosine is 0, 1 over 0 is undefined. So you're going to have some undefined spots. We call those asymptotes. And so, basically, the long and short of it is, with tangent, is if you can identify A and B, and remember that period is pi over B, and also remember that your cycle will occur everywhere from, it will span basically from negative pi over 2b to pi over 2b. And your asymptotes, that's where the cycle will span through, and your asymptotes will occur at both limits. And so I guess really the best way to understand tangent is to just kind of go ahead and do a practice problem. So let's do tangent of 3, not 3, we'll do tangent of 2x. So same kind of rules where you're going to flip it if you need to, sketch it, label it. But let's talk about the labeling thing here first. My A value is 1, and it's kind of like an amplitude. I'll show you what I mean. My B value is 2, meaning my period is going to be pi over 2, meaning my graph will occur from negative pi over 4 to pi over 4. The reason that happens is because the formula is pi over 2b, and my b value is 2, and 2 times 2 is 4. And so if you look, to get from pi over 4 to pi over 4, that is pi over 2 long. You've got pi over 4 to 0, that's pi over 4, and you've got another pi over 4. So that gives you 2 pi over 4, which is just pi over 2, if that makes sense. So how will this look? Well, on a graph, you have negative pi over 4 and pi over 4. Well, what I've essentially done is I've established a scale. And so every notch here is going to be pi over 4. So 2 pi over 4, which is pi over 2, and then 3 pi over 4, and then 4 pi over 4, which is pi, and then 5 pi over 4, and then 6 pi over 4, which is 3 pi over 2. I could keep going. 7 pi over 4, and then 8 pi over 4, which is 2 pi. You can keep doing that. I just like to show you that each of these gaps is 2 pi long, because that is the period in this tangent function. But basically, you have asymptotes at the limits. So I have an asymptote here, and I have an asymptote here. That means every 2 spaces I have an asymptote. So that makes life pretty convenient. And so now I just got to draw the sine function. Well, or the tangent function graph. At all these points in the middle, it's going to cross at 0. 1 second. Alright, I'm glad this video is about over because the little man is freaking out. Here's where the amplitude comes in. We have these little spaces here. And you can do this if you would like, if you're kind of a perfectionist. You can see there's going to be even spacing here. You can see if I start here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. And so I can take my period, my pi over 2, and I can divide it by 4, just like I do with the other graphs, and get a pi over 8. So each one of these little tick marks is pi over 8 if you're into really figuring it out. But basically, at these 2 marks, these little 8 marks, that's where your amplitude, if we will, come in. So we've got one at -1 and at 1, because that's what our quote amplitude is, and it crosses a 0. So there's where your tangent function looks like. And we're just going to keep doing that over and over. And so that is what your tangent function looks like. And basically, I like to just show you that it should happen 2 times before pi, because the normal period of a tangent function is pi. And so if pi from 0 to pi is here to here, look how many times it happens. It happens a half of a time, then a full time, and then another half of a time. So 1/2 plus 1 plus 1/2 is 2. So that's the basics of tangent. It's really no different. It's just the key all lies in the period and the fact that you have asymptotes at the limit of your tangent function. So go ahead and give it a try. If you have any questions, let me know. Bye.